don't middle. Just bet the guy with the off number.
Mm.
Do what I say. Do what I call playing a half a middle. And people say to me, well, what do you mean playing a half a middle? I said, yeah, it's called a bet. So for the most part,
Pace, you gotta use that on a stream sometime, buddy. I hope Randy's out there listening somewhere right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Lines, the only podcast purifying the sports betting industry. Remember to like, download, subscribe, follow us on all the socials at InPlay Live. On today's show, Chewing the Fat with Fats. I'm your host, Shane Mercer, as always joined by Andrew Pace, founder of InPlay Live, a community of like-minded sports bettors dedicated to long-term success. And we've got Steven Diano joining us, but many professional sports bettors simply know him as Fats. He is on the board of the Sports Betting Hall of Fame. He lived in Vegas and had a crew of runners for about 3 decades. He worked with the likes of Billy Walters before going it alone and becoming a legendary bettor in his own right. Fats, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's glad to be here. Happy to have a chat with you guys.
Hey, we're really excited to have you on, but I just want to kick this off by asking, Fats, what are you betting on these days?
Very interesting that you bring that up because I am normally don't do anything with baseball. I swore off baseball almost 15, 20 years ago.
The story sounds very familiar already.
I haven't done anything with baseball. And the grind of football from, preseason football in August till NCAA ends in April, I mean, you need a break. And I used to pretty much just kind of take the summers off and not bet anything and just relax. I would play poker and stuff like that in Vegas down at the World Series and stuff. So that's how I would kill my summers. But last year, there was a guy that I was working with who does some stuff with baseball parlays, some correlations involved. And so I just messed with him. It didn't take that much of my time. It was just, he would say what he wanted. I would go hunt down the best price, get us the best numbers get on the payouts, and we grinded that out for a little profit during the year. So I was willing to do that again this year. And then I got involved with somebody who's really good with the weather. And so they were pretty accurate with like football weather and stuff like that. And I still owed them some money when April rolled around, like from the end of football season. And now baseball was getting ready to pretty much wrap up and not do anything. And I said, you want me to send you this money? And he said, well, aren't you going to do baseball? I said, what do you mean do baseball? He said, well, we get some weather stuff with the baseball too. And I said, okay. So now I got roped into doing the baseball. But that's not that bad because I'll get the stuff once a day. I'll know what he gets. He'll even tell me the night before. And then I just got to get the orders filled at the best numbers. And he's winning. So, all right. So that sucked me in. And then I'm in a Twitter space and a guy says to me, bet Luzardo no runs first inning today. This is like the second baseball or the season. And I said, why should I do it? Because people tell me that all the time. Oh, you should go bet this or you should go bet that. But what he said to me was, he says, the guy hasn't given up a run in the first inning. He's like 33 of his last 35 games he's pitched. No runs in the first inning. And I said, wow, that's kind of intriguing. So I said, okay, I watched it. I looked at it. I verified to a point. I went back and looked up some stats. Says, yeah, this guy's pretty. So I played him, and the next week, so like a couple times in a row, Luzardo's holding up just like a champ. And then I said to myself, well, he can't be the only pitcher that's great coming out of the gate in the first inning. I've been handicapping pretty much every pitcher in the National and American League and how they do in the first inning. And then I'm trying to combine it with other factors and stuff like that to predict the yes or no runs in the first inning. And it's very, very interesting. One of the things I've discovered is that it's very difficult to root in no run in the first inning. Something always happens. And it's like the hardest root in the world, rooting for no run in the first inning. But I discovered something that's even harder to root for than no run in the first inning. Would you care to guess what that is?
Yes run.
Yes
run.
Yes run.
Rooting for yes a run in the first inning is even harder than rooting for no run in the first inning. So
I knew it was coming.
I've been dabbling with that and not playing it big, but I've been winning with that too. So between the weather and the parlays and that, I got 3 little things I'm doing. And when they all win on the same day, that's sweet. And usually one wins and the other loses, one that makes up for it. And we had 1 week where they all lost everything all week long. It was a disaster. But I've dug back out of that, and I'm having a decent baseball season so far. And every day the guy who mentions Luzardo, he says, "Don't forget, you owe me money for all the money you're making on these things."
Oh, come on!
He wants his cut for all the extra work I did. But he did inspire me to do the work. And generally, I do not delve into the handicapping side of it. I know enough people who do all that, and my specialty is just getting down at the best numbers. So but it's been a fun little adventure, and it's like my little project, and it's working. So I'm happy with it.
Well, Steve, it sounds like if you needed to negotiate the payout with that particular individual that recommended you get onto this stuff, we could send your wife in to do that negotiating, and she will do a fine job. Because if you guys are listening to this podcast right now and not watching it, we saw Steve lean back and need to tell his wife that he was not giving anything away as she was questioning whether his edge was being divulged to the public there. So that was pretty cool.
Well, the part I didn't totally give away is where I think I have an edge versus the way the lines are being made versus how I'm handicapping it. And I think there's a discrepancy there that I'm taking advantage of in my mind, but I can't verify that. Hoping I'm going to talk to some people at BetBash that actually know how they make those lines to get a little extra insight into it.
One of the things that's interesting about that market, well, there's 2 things, and I think the first that's really an upside to a lot of the bettors at In Play Live is that you are going to blend in really nicely. They say it's one of the most square markets you can wager on in the betting world. So if you have struggles with account limitations and different things like that, this can be a market that you can actually exploit for longer term than some of the other ones. But the second thing about that market, which I freaking hate, but there's probably upside to this too. I don't do a ton of pregame betting myself, but how much the line moves on a market like that is astronomical compared to, say, obviously like an NFL side before, pregame.
Yeah,
so you can really move those lines. Yeah.
What's interesting though is, I have the baseball package, which I haven't subscribed to until this year. And so now every night, sometimes I could have, like today, I happen to have no in 11 of the 15 games today, which is that's high. Usually it doesn't get near that much, but I've had that much before. But so tonight, as the games are on, I'll have all the games on, and like I'll have all the channels, and then the first inning, I'm like flipping between channel pitch for like, and then in 10 minutes, that's it. I'm out of action. I got no more action left. Or as soon as they score on, boom,
it's done. I do have to caveat all the listeners, guys. This is being recorded on a Monday, so you're going to be able to see if there's a bunch of no-run first innings on Monday night, you'll have known how Steve did. So do not think, oh, I'm going to go bet all the games tonight and I'll know that I'll cover off those 11 games. It's a different day.
Yeah, but you can go and check them and see how Steven did.
I can tell you what the 11 games were. Actually,
yeah, this will air Wednesday, so we can verify how you did.
I
if you
want to
want
see how bad I did.
Sure.
Let's hold on a second. I'll just tell you the 4 games I don't have now, and then you'll know the other.
Yeah, that's the easier way to do it.
That'll be the easiest way to do it. Let me take a look here real quick. 4 games that I did not. I have nothing on the Dodgers game, the Seattle game, the Miami game, the Texas game, and those in the other 11, including the Colorado game with a total of 11.5. I went no with the plus money.
Yeah. Wow, that's brave.
I hope that one pays well.
So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, and all of our listeners, our audience can see for themselves as well. And love that you shared that, though, because the Nerfy YY thing is a thing that we're doing within our community, and there's some guys that are calling it out as well. Not necessarily 11 plays in a day, but they've been calling it with some success. So that's pretty awesome that you're doing it as well.
I'll tell you a couple of ways that you can lose these things. Like I had the other day, I had first 5 guys, 3 up, 3 down the first. Now we go to the bottom of the inning, out, and then walk, hit by pitch. And then the next guy got out real quick. And I had a similar situation where I got 2 outs with a runner on third and in the bottom of the first, and they wild pitch, so the guy scores, and then the very next pitch, the guy just grounds out or something. So, stuff like that.
So you're missing one of the bad beats there. You're missing one of the bad beats there, Steve. You're missing the balk off.
The balk off.
So if you go 5 up, 5 down, you get a triple or somehow a runner on third, which sometimes these guys are pretty speedy in the first inning, right? So you'll get a guy that's on first that steals second, steals third. And then if you lose to a balk, you can add that one to your Hall of Fame of bad beats.
I got a Hall of Fame winner, though, in this. And I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. And then you tell me how I possibly managed to win the under in the no run in the first inning. The game starts with the Miami Marlins. Single, double. First 3 batters of the game. Single, double. And I managed to win no run first inning. Not only then, I had started to sweat out the bottom at the end. Now, explain to me how I got out of the
right.
Wow.
So a couple guesses. My first guess is going to be that on the double, or the first way that wins is on the second single, he was thrown out at third, and then on the double, he didn't run home. So you have second and third, 1 out. No. That would be my.
There's runners on first and second.
Let's hear it.
Runners are on first and second when the double is hit.
When the double's hit out at home.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be some sort of bloop double where he got out at home and the guy didn't go.
What happened was the guy at second was waiting to see if the ball was going to be caught, and it hit off the wall and came back. So the other outfielder was right there to get it off, to carry him off the wall and throw it in. But what happened was the batter and the second, and the guy that was on first, they were still running. So the one guy got kind of caught up. So the batter was headed towards second. The runner who had started at second kind of wanted to stop at third, but the problem was there was a third runner in between them. So he was
already there.
And by the time he didn't even make it close to the plate, he got out, and then they screwed up the rest of the inning.
But he had to go home.
Oh, he had no choice.
So you still at second and third, 1 out.
Because the batter had gone all the way to second, and now you got the guy from first halfway between second and third. He's on his way to third, and he sees he catches up to the other guy. So that's basically how
Steve,
that.
we call that one for the good guys.
Yeah.
We call that one for the good guys. And it also speaks to volume, right? When you wager on sports as a professional, there is no circumstance that doesn't at some point show up in a way that you've won or lost a bet that seemed so improbable or impossible. And it's one of the beauties and thrills of it too.
Yeah, you get all different ways to see you win and lose, but you have to have the temperament to just laugh it off, and even when they all lose, and it's pretty frustrating. Like tonight, when you see I go 1-9 or 1-10, you'll picture me sitting here on the couch throwing things at the TV.
Oh, come on, Steve. 11 6 up, 6 downs, and to the moon from there. You got to have that power of positive thinking.
But I don't really throw the stuff at the TV. You just will be picturing me doing that.
Okay.
What you really should be picturing is my wife wondering why I'm sitting here all by myself cursing.
Okay. Yeah. I think she knows.
Yeah,
I'll just sit there, and all of a sudden you'll hear an MF out of me or something.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I'm sure she'll know. You know, one way though that you almost never lose. I mean, you can lose obviously, but you don't lose much. Is middling, Fats. And I wanted to ask you about middling because you started betting at a very young age. I think you were a teenager. But how old were you when you started middling?
That was the first. I mean, when I started betting, I was just betting small, $5-10 a game through the son of a friend of mine whose father was a bookmaker, so he booked all his friends. And then through a neighbor of mine who bet, he kind of I heard him betting one time, and I heard him bet once, and then I heard him bet the opposite team. I said, "What? You just bet the other team?" And he's like, "Yeah, but it's a middle." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean a middle?" And he told me he had two different lines and explained it to me. And I was like, "Wow, that's like 20-1. That's a pretty good deal. I got to find more bookmakers." So then I was on. I mean, I'm a high school kid. I'm out there looking for extra bookmakers now. And I found some.
And I don't mean to age you, but give us a sense of what year this is, so that we sort of understand the betting landscape.
This is in the 80s. This is in
right.
Like
so it's not.
There's no online. This is no online middling.
1982. And
so you got to go out and find books to middle against. Like, how do you go doing that in 1982?
So you just find somehow. I would find. I managed to find. I found a guy who was supposedly a bookmaker, would give me a line. This was during the NCAA tournament. I finally had a second bookmaker now. He would give me a line. And so I told my first book, look, I want to bet higher now. I want to bet like 200 a game because I'm going to, I have another guy that I'm betting the other side with. So don't worry.
You told him that?
And he was cool with that. It's fine. Except the part I didn't realize was when you win with one guy and you lose with the other guy, and the guy you win with doesn't pay you, you've got a problem.
Ooh. Oh.
So I learned that lesson quick. So now, but the guy worked with me and said, look, get the money. He knew I would be honorable and pay it. And I was on a mission to get this money from this guy. And apparently he worked as behind the counter at a deli. And I went right to where he worked. And I was, I was a teenager on fire. And I got the money out of the guy eventually by going over. I said, look, he said, you can't come in here and do that. I said, well, fine. You pay me. I won't come in here again. You don't pay me. I'll be here every day for lunch or dinner or whatever until I get the money. And it won't be a pretty sight for you. So anyway, I got that. And then so that taught me the pitfalls of that. And what I actually ended up learning from that experience was when you get a guy that deals you off numbers, don't middle. Just bet the guy with the off numbers.
Mm.
Do what I say. Do what I call playing a half a middle. And people say to me, well, what do you mean play and a half a middle? I said, yeah, it's called a bet. So for the most part,
Pace, you gotta use that on a stream sometime, buddy. I hope Randy's out there listening somewhere right now.
Oh my God. No. So, Steve, sorry to cut you off, but we have a guy in our group who calls middles for us, and he's so good at what he does, but mentally he cannot do these uncovered bets. So we'll always be like, guys, if we are like doing some sort of session of middling, we'll be like, guys, we're uncovering this line. It's too good of a line. We have to just uncover it. And it doesn't matter what the bet is. If we're not middling and we're just taking a straight bet on something and we get ahead, we always know that he's middled or arbed out of every single bet that he makes. Yeah. So we're going to play this clip for him and just say, what's half a middle?
Well, I'm going to tell you something else. If you're middling, if your goal is to be out there middling, and you use the expression, I have to close this game.
Yep.
You're bleeding money.
Yep.
Because there is no such thing as I have to close a game. I have a rule. And my rule is you can't make a good bet a better bet by making a bad bet. So, for example, if you lay 3 on a game where the line's 6, that's a good bet.
Yep.
Now, if that game is painted 6 everywhere, taking 6 or laying 6, that's a bad bet because it's everywhere. There's no edge there. Okay. Yep. Taking that 6 just because you were lucky enough to lay 3 doesn't improve your EV or your value of your 3. It makes it worse. So you can't make a good bet the -3, a better bet by making a bad bet the +6. Now, if the game's painted 6 and you find a 7, or you can take 7.5, or maybe 7.5 minus 15 or 20. Okay, now that's reasonable because in other words, each bet, if you play a middle, each bet must be good enough to be a standalone bet in and of itself. And then if it's not, then you're just bleeding money and you're giving money away. What you're doing, and I'll give you another example. When you find a bookmaker who's got off lines, let's say he's giving you the line out of the Daily News or whatever newspaper you have, okay? If you bet that guy and then you buy off and you try to middle, what's going to end up happening with that guy is, first of all, in the long run, you're definitely beating the guy. Second of all, there's only so much money that guy is willing to lose to you. And then he's going to say, no mas. So what happens is, by the time, let's say the guy's cap is 10,000, you have to beat him for 10,000. He's going to say, forget it, I'm done. Well, if you just bet the guy, then you're going to get the full 10,000 in your pocket. If you're middling, yeah, you might hit a couple of middles, but in the process of winning 10,000 from him, you're going to lose 5,000 to Chris or Pinnacle or somebody else. You're just giving money away. So when you got a guy who's got off lines like that, just bet. And and if you ever hear yourself use the term, I got to close that bet, then you ought to call for a medic because you are bleeding.
Well, you know what you just described, I think, is a really good point. And one of the things that we talk about on this podcast is obviously the players being limited for their sharp action, but then also, the industry as a whole, the future of the industry, who is limiting, who isn't limiting, who isn't limiting players, all those types of things.
Started on that train.
Well, there's a reason why a book like Pinnacle is actually teaching you how to middle, and it's because they're comfortable with gambling on their lines if the player isn't, against the books that don't have their lines. And just historically speaking, you're going to lose on the Pinnacle side and you're going to win on the MGM side. That's just the nature of what it is that we do. And while you as the player might be net up, you may have not took MGM for all that you could have because of the fact that you did bet out of all your lines somewhere else. And meanwhile, Pinnacle's sitting there going like, yeah, you made 5,000. MGM lost 10,000, but we also made 5,000 as well in the process.
And that was like gifting.
And one of the things that we
Chris, you're just gifting that money to
yeah,
them.
totally. But on the flip side to that is if you took that same money that I'm referencing being won at MGM and you were able to lose that 5,000 to a book that isn't a sharp book, there's upside to that loss that could actually create future wins from the losses at that book, whereas losing it to the sharp sports book doesn't necessarily have upside because you know they're going to be there. So it's always an interesting sort of discussion in the whole thing.
This is what I have to say to
go
that.
Ahead.
There's actually going to be a seminar about Bet Bash as to how to get longevity with these books that limit you and stuff like that. And part of the spiel is you're going to get, you have to bet some square action or maybe lose in certain markets to them and stuff like that. And my theory is it's hard enough to win just laying 11 to 10 straight up. Now, on top of winning at 11 to 10, now you have to lose money to be able to win more money later. It's too much trouble. Just win, move on. They throw you out. You got to make your efforts finding the next place to bet if they throw you out. Bitch about it, complain about it, but just find another way to get in. Find more people that have outs and do it that way. But trying to people that say, oh well, yeah, but I lose to them in this and this and this, so I can still bet that and that. I doubt seriously that they're making money. Half of those people say that they're just happy that they're not limited. A lot of them. So I'm not sold on that theory. I got to lose with this guy so I can keep playing with him. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, keep playing, I don't think is the right term that I would argue. My stance in this discussion is losing up front to win more long term. So not losing to keep forever. Losing up front to win more long term. And I've been a huge testament to that in my betting career in a massive way. This is a lot different than the US landscape, but I'm in Canada here and I've come out of sports books where my first $1,000 wager, not even some massive wager, got me limited in one swing. Right. So versus losing that first $1,000 wager, letting that account sit for potentially a year and then going back to it, and you can have a leash well into the 5 figures.
Yeah, there are certain things, but the way this market is, like, DraftKings and DraftKings in particular, they were, when I first started, when I moved to Michigan, I was, oh great, I could play DraftKings now. I was playing with them straight through football season all the way into January, and then the first 2 weeks of January, college basketball started out really good that year. So I started winning in college basketball. And all of a sudden, in the middle of January, boom, my limits were cut. I could bet like $100 a game, $30 a game. And I wasn't even that, I was a net winner. I think I lost most of football season there and just was up a little bit in basketball. I was overall net winner, not that much. And they just shut me down because the basketball was doing so well. So
that's too bad.
I don't understand. Yeah. All the money that they here's what really annoys me. Now that you got me on this topic, I have to say this now. They sit there.
Hey, we were going to get here anyway at some point. So
because I got to do a whole podcast rant on this on I forget his name now but it was on the one at Circa, one of those late night at Circa shows on their live radio there in the sports book.
Right, the Vizio or whatever. Yep.
So what my issue is, they sit there constantly, and I tweet about this all the time whenever I see comments about it, about how they're advocates for responsible gaming, and they talk all about responsible gaming. And
one of our favorite topics.
Their business model, and they say they're responsible because they have these things in place where you can set your own limit. So you can go. That's like telling the alcoholic, look, you're in charge of pouring your own drinks tonight, and you have a problem, so keep them small. Okay, that's what they're doing. Okay, and then the responsible gamblers, the ones that can manage their bankroll and aren't in any danger of becoming degenerate gamblers or losing their rent money or anything like that, they're telling them, we're gonna cut you. We're gonna cut you down. We don't want you to get crazy. We want you to a little bit. We don't want you to have a bigger limit. So they're gonna cut down the responsible people, and then they sit there and they'll let the irresponsible people bet whatever they want. And they target that with their advertising. I mean, all these ads where they tell you bet this parlay. I mean, you watch a baseball game now, the announcers read off, hey, and you can get in action right now, and you can play this, and this in progress. Parlay it together, and then the other announcer goes, oh, wow, that'll pay like 4.5 to 1 or something like that. And they're probably way juiced out worse than that. You'd probably be able to get way better than that to begin with. And people don't know better, and they're just sucking people in. Because a lot of people, they just want somebody else to tell them what to do. Then you don't have to blame themselves for why they're losing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's ingrained into the actual broadcast themselves, like you mentioned there, which is unfortunate because, if there is regulation, like I'm not sure, Steve, how much you've followed some of this stuff, but there's been some regulation specifically with ads and how they're presented in Ontario, which is the legalized state that has the DraftKings, FanDuel, et cetera, here in Canada, legalized province, I should say. And they're now seeing some of this, but what they try to regulate, you realize that they've legalized all this stuff, so it's going to happen. But then it's like, what did you expect to happen? Because what they try to regulate doesn't address the very things that you just said. So you might not have Connor McDavid or, Aaron Judge, telling you where to bet anymore in Ontario, but then you flip on the broadcast that's covering the game, and of course they tell you exactly what you just mentioned. And like you said, like they're giving you wagers where like the hold is like as high as any available. It isn't like they're offering some straight bet advice, or they might, but it's uncommon.
Or you log in and they have a parlay listed right when you log in.
Yeah.
And then with a note that says 1,320 people played this exact same parlay.
Yeah.
Would you like to do it too?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Right? You know what, though?
We want to book this we don't want you to bet more than $100, but we want to book this for more.
Yeah. I love that though, because for me, when I read that, it's like an instant like, oh, I'm not going to bet any of that stuff because 1,300 other people did it. Right. And it's a great way to just sort of avoid the crowd. And,
I've never even looked at those to chart them to see if any of them ever win. But.
Yeah, I don't follow it much either. Since we're on the topic though, Fats, and you're somebody who spent 30 years in Vegas. Your whole life has been focused on sports betting or betting in some way, shape, or form. What are your thoughts on as you sort of have seen the regulation change and sort of societal attitudes change towards betting? How would you describe it now versus then? And kind of where do you see the North American landscape going?
Well, I'm hoping that eventually we're going to be able to lobby together at some point to restrict their ability to. I mean, the whole country was excited. I mean, like all the gamblers in the country were pretty excited about the idea of sports betting becoming legal throughout the country. And we've experienced, what these sports books are doing. Vegas casinos have done it in the past or similar to that as well. And we were thinking like, now you're going to have these big companies. You'll be allowed to bet. What are they going to care if you're betting, nickels or dimes or something like that? And it's shocking to me that these places can't even just, it's fine. You want to target your suckers and let them bet 10 and 20,000 a game. You could do that, but why wouldn't you want to let the sharp guys bet nickels and dimes without? Because we get an out. You get an out that takes 500 or 1,000. I mean, we're not proud. We'll bet that. We're happy to bet it, and they can take the bet. They can move the line. They cannot move the line. Exactly. They don't want to move the line. They can take a second bet when they're where they want to be. They move the line, and they move the line, and then they can let their whale come in and maybe bet the other side. and now they're taking advantage of our information. So it boggles my mind with all the money they spend on having Kevin Hart say the nonsense stuff he says in commercials. They're probably paying him $10 million. They could take that $10 million advertising fund and just say, anybody who wants to can bet nickels and dimes and use that $10 million fund just to book those bets, and they'd be fine. And nobody'd be complaining anymore.
Right. Well, I think you were mentioning before we hopped on the call here that you had watched the Paris Smith episode that we did, and one of the things that she suggested was those very sports books that you're referencing having this higher tier for some of their players that gives them access to sharper lines like the lines at Pinnacle, and allows them to keep playing in a certain capacity. Because one of the things that has always shocked me, and this is not pro player, everything we do on this podcast tends to be pro player. But when you do limit a player and you clip their account, it baffles and completely boggles my mind that if I want to go place a 10-leg parlay on one of these sites that has no EV at all, like it's just your generic parlay, that the lottery style parlay, it boggles my mind that they don't take the bet then. They should still have systems in place to let you wager on certain things on their site. And what they'll tell you, Shane, I sent you this screenshot recently of one of the professionals at In Play Live that calls wagers for us. And it's the sports book contacting the player, explaining to the player that they are concerned with his level of activity. They're checking in on him to make sure that he's okay. Meanwhile, he's beat them for over 5 figures. And they proceed to tell him that they can no longer take his action because they're concerned about his style of play. But they encouraged him in the email to please go and play as much as he wants at their online casino. So it's like the most contradictory. Hey, I got Steve to laugh. That was one of my goals on this podcast. I got him to laugh.
Oh,
there we go. But it's like, you should see the screenshot. I'll send it to you over Twitter when we're done here. But the screenshot is shocking because in the same wave of their wand, they literally say, we're concerned about your play. Please go play as much as you want in the casino. Yeah. It's just unbelievable, right? Yeah.
I mean,
but I guess what I'm getting at is if you're encouraging a player to go play in the casino, why would you clip their ability to hit a lottery parlay? That's how they can get some of the money back if they have the right player that is like, oh, geez, okay, they're letting me do this, but they're not letting me do that. I'll stay and try to hit one of these still. That I'm describing a unique player, but it would exist.
That's that's similar to me. I've been asked to stop playing blackjack in a casino for card counting, and
right.
They'll tell you that you can play anything you want in the casino, but blackjack. I mean, you want to play the slots, go ahead, play the slots, but you can't play blackjack. So that's kind of along the same lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so since we're back on Vegas and the casino again, Fats, you spent 30 years, plus in Vegas. You started off, you were running a team of runners for, I guess, what was known as the Philly crew, which is awesome because I didn't play live. We've got a little bit of a Philly crew as well, of sorts. And but you had a Philly crew back then, and it was sort of through that crew and the work you were doing that kind of brought you into the sphere of Billy Walters. Talk to us a little bit about how you met him and how that sort of relationship grew.
Well, that's really a great story because what happened with the Billy thing was he had been arrested and indicted in the famous computer trial which took place in 1992. And I had just been in Vegas for a few years, and what Billy was on trial for, they weren't charging him with bookmaking. They originally thought they had uncovered the largest bookmaking operation on the planet, and then they discovered that these guys, they weren't bookmaking, that they were betting. And so the guy that I was working for, the head of the money and everything that was behind the Philly crew, and all of us that were betting, our concern was, well, if Billy loses this trial, and if this trial says that what Billy was doing is illegal and you can't do it anymore. Well, we're out of business because that means we can't do it either because we're pretty much doing the same thing he was doing. We're just betting. So we basically, for the most part, shut down operations for the trial. And I was sent to the courthouse every day to sit down, take copious notes, and watch that trial. And so I sat in the front row directly behind Billy Walters and his wife, Susan, and right by the main defense table. I had my notebook out, and I would take notes, and on the breaks every now and then, you see the guy there every day. Eventually he said hello, and so we kind of got to know each other a little bit there during the trial. Didn't try to bother him too much. And then after the trial was over and they won, there was a big celebration party, which I went to, and I talked to him more, and he got to know my my background, and then my boss, the businessman, as I refer to him, came out to Vegas to meet him, and they eventually worked out a deal to start doing business, and so then we were became a mover for Billy. So that got us into that new level of moving games, and so then it was like about 2 years later where my guy had gotten a partner, and then they were debating whether they really wanted the expense of having Vegas, so they were thinking of splitting up and kind of knocking out the Vegas thing, and Billy was like, "Can I get Fats? I'll take Fats." So Billy poached me right away, and I worked for him for a year, and he matched the deal that I had with them, and I worked for him for a year. That was kind of like the last piece of education I needed as far as knowing because I'd met so many other people and what they do, and worked with other crews and stuff like that, and then to see the GOAT do what he did kind of was like the last piece of the puzzle. And then I would have stayed working with him again another year, and he wanted to change my package a little bit that he had matched to get me, and he wanted to cut it down just a little bit. And I was like, no, I'm same package, or I'll just go on my own. And so I went on my own, and it was probably it was the time anyway to do it. And I started out slow and then built it up. I was trained, for example, let's say you go in a casino and there's a football game that's 8 and the line's pretty much 7 everywhere. And let's say that 8's good for 5 dimes or 10 dimes. And, but at this point, I'm only betting 2 dimes a game because I'm just kind of betting my own money now and putting it. So my DNA wouldn't allow me to just bet 2 dimes and allow them to move the line. I still had to bet it for 5,000 or 10,000. I can't just waste all that extra plus 8. So what I would do I would bet it anyway. But there were so many other groups that I had worked with over the years, and that I wanted to stay in touch with, maybe so I could get information and stuff like that. So I would call them up afterwards. I got my 2 dimes that I need, or 3 dimes, whatever I was going to bet. And I would say, hey, I got an extra dime on so-and-so plus 8. Can you use it? And they'd be like, yeah, we'll take it. And call the next guy. Can you use a dime plus 8? And yeah. So that was how I built up and kept my relationship, by overbetting stuff I knew they would all want. And then just giving it out as little gifts and trinkets. And then, whenever if I needed something, or, the phone's always open to call and ask. And that's how I maintained all my relationships over the years.
Cool.
And built up, what I was able to build for myself.
That's pretty awesome that you were sort of doing that and kind of working with other sports bettors in that way, maybe not with like an official capacity or sort of any kind of like a contract or anything like that, but just that you guys had built that sort of camaraderie and friendship.
Yeah, well, I also had a theory too. I used to call it the revolving door theory of gambling. And that basically was that there was no point in burning your bridges with people, because the way this industry works, at some point, let's say you have it out with somebody and you say, I'm never doing business with them again. At some point, some situation's going to come up where you're probably going to want to do business with them, where there's a situation where it's good for both parties. So I always said, you might as well maintain all your relationships as best you can, because the revolving door theory of gambling says eventually you're going to need each other at some point or find a common reason to work together. So might as well just keep everything as good as you can for as long as you can.
That's crazy. So when you were saying this was the early 90s that you branched off on your own, was that correct?
Well, let's see. Billy, the trial was 92. We were moving for him for a year or two.
So
I got
95.
married in 94. We were in April of 94, and we were still moving for him through that season. And then that next season, so I guess it would have been like September of 94, that next football season was when my guys decided they were going to just split up, and then there was the opportunity for me to work for Billy. So
fast forward to today, when you walk through Las Vegas, obviously the strip looks different, but also the betting landscape looks different. There's obviously the similarities, the old school sports books, the cash tickets, the physical tickets, all that kind of stuff. But separately of the online betting landscape, they now have obviously all the kiosks, right? Where you can obviously place a live wager, place a pregame wager, whatever you want to place without going to see someone and without having an account. So as a Canadian myself, if I go down to Nevada and I go to place a wager, I've always been able to place a physical ticket, which was always a fun thing for me to do, given that you could place a bet online, no problem. It was fun to actually have this sort of nostalgic physical ticket in your hands. But, in these past, sort of 4 years, you'd be bombarded with these girls, at the front saying, oh, we need you to sign up for MGM. We need you to sign up for Caesars, all this kind of stuff. And they're giving you some sort of promo to get you
talking about to get players cards so they can track you.
Players cards, yes. But also now that sports betting's legalized, to get you signed up for their online platform so that you could play. Right. And I'd say the same thing to every single one of them. Like I couldn't sign up. I'd be like, geez, I'd love to be able to sign up, but I'm from Canada. They're like, okay. I couldn't, but I could go over to the kiosk and use that online system and machine. Did you ever, in these last, however many years since those came out, transition to using some of those types of things, or did you stick with that like sort of 90s model of being in person and having a team?
Well, my only experience with the kiosk system was after I moved to Michigan. There's a casino down the road, maybe like 30, 40 minutes from here, called Gun Lake. And I would have some, on Monday nights, I would have some leads for some college football totals. And so I would go over there to bet, but we would bet them on the kiosk. And, you'd bet and they wouldn't move, and you'd bet it again. And you can only bet limited amounts. So you'd be,
they're small.
300, 300, 300, 300. And eventually I would just send somebody over there to do it. And, I did it once myself, and then I sent somebody over there every week. Sometimes you could get as much as I think we got like 18 bets for 300 apiece before they moved the line or anything like that. But eventually then, the following week or the week after that, somebody came out and said, if you want to bet, you got to go to the window. And, they stop you. And really, the kiosks really aren't for the guys like us that want to bet larger. The kiosks are there so that the guys like us, when we go to the window to make a bet, we don't have to stand in line behind the $10 parlay better while he's, picking and betting while he's standing there. He doesn't even know who he wants yet. So that's really what the kiosks were invented for, I think.
Right.
To keep the congestion away from the line for the people that really want to make significant bets, or, normal sized bets. Or I guess not normal necessarily, but, nickels and dimes are going to bet 500 and 1,000, which the kiosks won't handle. They want that action at the window so they can see it coming. and the kiosks are mostly for the $10 parlay guy and the $20 and $50 and $100 better. So really, when guys like us go in there and start jamming the kiosk until they figure out we bet a game 30 times, we're really committing the crime there. We shouldn't be doing that. But
right.
It's interesting when you say guys like us, and I want to sort of tailor this question with sort of
I'm
average
including
sports.
both of you clowns over there,
right? Yeah,
guys like
but when you talk about guys like us,
you're not. Don't think I think you're not a part of this.
No, well, I want to ask about that though, because I'm somebody who probably a few years ago would have thought the sharps, right? And in my conversation with average guys who bet their $10 parlay bettors type of thing, right? And like outside of the In Play Live community, and they'll be like, oh, the sharps are on this, the sharps are on that, the sharps are doing this. When you talk about guys like us and the sharps, it sort of paints this picture of like a small group of sports bettors who work together and move the lines. Do you feel like you were among a group like that?
I'm not necessarily that I'm among a group like that, but I'm in a group that is capable of taking advantage of that system, so to speak.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm sharp enough to know that this is, how you could game that system, or, right or wrong. I know that you could do that. So when I say guys like us, I'm talking about guys that know that you can get away with maybe pumping the same $300 bet 10 times before they figure it out. When if you walked up to the window and asked for 3,000, you might not get that. So that's guys like us.
Well, I'm kind of asking it though, because you do belong to this sports betting Hall of Fame. You're on the board of directors, so you really are a part of.
I'm not in the Hall of Fame. I'm not in the Hall,
but you're on the board.
I'm just on the board of directors,
right? And so I want to know, because that is the board of directors, and anybody affiliated with that, I would put in a group of guys like us, right? This sort of sharp bettors. What do you do as part of the sports betting Hall of Fame on the board of directors? How does that work? And how would Pace get in there if we wanted to get him in there?
That's funny. I get trolled a lot on the in the Twitter spaces that I hang out in, a lot about the guy will pick a couple winners in a row and they'll say, "Bats, can you get him into the sports gambling Hall of Fame?" Stuff like that. I've got the main guy is a guy that I made a bet with, that he claimed he could pick 60% in the NFL. So this was like after week 4. So it was basically 14 weeks left, and we were using the Circa contest lines. So he had to pick 5 games a week, and he had to go 60%.
Okay.
And I said, I called it the impossible bet. There's no way you're going to win it. There's no way you're picking 60%. He did it, 61.4%. And now he talks about is how he's in the top 3% of the handicappers in the country, and that I'm using my influence to blackball him from getting into the Hall of Fame.
Oh.
And even though what he did was legendary, because he did the impossible bet, and so I mean, I assume it's all in fun, but sometimes he sounds pretty serious about it. But
and he did this for one season.
I told him he needs to build his resume. He needs to do that about 15 more years in a row, and then
okay,
and then we'll talk. But the way the thing is set up, Spanky wanted to get this thing started, and so he was trying to find a diversified group of people, sports bettors, bookmakers, maybe a few media guys, and people that knew people and that were familiar with the whole landscape. And he tried to form that committee. And then we had criteria for what a member, somebody in the Hall of Fame should have done in their career, or what type of a career or whatever. And then he set up the system. And the way the system works is we'll nominate, each member can nominate up to like 5 people at the beginning of an induction season. And then they take all those nominations that everybody gets, and whoever got the most, whatever person got the most nominations, that'll be the first person that gets voted on. Then the next most will be the next person that gets voted on. And then you have to pass. You have to get 75% of the voting membership to get in. Now, that's not as hard to do now because this is only our second year, so we've only inducted 2 classes. If we can't push through our first 10 or 20 that we come up with, then it's going to be pretty tough to get in altogether.
Right, right.
And we do 5 live people and 5 people who are no longer with us each year. So we have
okay.
We try to put in a class of 10, and naturally the Billy Walters was in the was the cream of the first class, obviously. And now the people that get in, they become members of the board after that. So our board grows, so the number of votes we have
grows as well. For those of you that don't know what is being referenced right now, it's actually a really cool thing to check out. I mean, Vegas is always evolving, and I find that there's always that new thing in Vegas and that new spot and that new hangout and the new biggest club, and the list goes on and on. But Circa Sportsbook in Vegas has, in my opinion, the absolute coolest and best sportsbook. They're also, I correct me if I'm wrong, they're the only sports book that you can play online in Nevada where your account won't get clipped. And they have the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame there right next to their sports book with these beautiful plaques in this little room that shows these historic bettors that Steve or Fats here is referencing. And then above it, they have the Vizio studio where they shoot a lot of content that then gets aired on ESPN. And they picked up my living room on one of their episodes to talk about my sports betting setup on one of their shows, which I thought was really, really cool. But then separately of that, that's just a really cool sight and scene. So if you guys like sports betting, you ever check out Nevada, Vegas for anything, I highly recommend you go down to downtown Vegas, Fremont Street, and everything there is obviously a little bit older, but there is this real gem there, Circa Sportsbook, where Bet Bash is held, that you can see this stuff. And then they have the swim up or the stadium swim, which is the outdoor sports book and sports bar pool party, which is just a really cool, fun thing and a great way to enjoy a game. So we were there this year that was actually my first time going there, was just a couple of months ago, and it's really cool to see, and that's where that Sports Gambling Hall of Fame is.
And another note about that, because we made Bet Bash, Circa, the center of Bet Bash, and Derek Steven, he's a sports bettor himself, so he's a big fan. He loves having us there. He loves hosting this event on his property. It promotes his sports book and everything like that. But they offered, when we came up with the idea for the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame, they said, we got this section. We can build a little section right in our sports where we can actually put the plaques for the Hall of Fame. And they made a nice little Hall of Fame room where you can go in and see the plaques for the people that have been nominated. And then the final event of Bet Bash is a banquet now on for last Friday night, and that's the induction ceremony. Now, last year was our first induction ceremony where we inducted our first class. And now for me, I mean, I knew a lot of the people there. I knew all the inductees. I knew the presenters and the other sharp, famous guys that are probably going to be future Hall of Famers that we're going to get in there and extra classes and future classes. But I want to tell you something. Even though I know all these guys, well, hey, how you doing? Just being present in that room with all those people at one time, the amount of sports betting knowledge and sports betting expertise and careers of sports bettors that was all in that one room at one time. It was like breathtaking. It was like, I mean, I guess it's like if you're at a concert with your favorite, and you're like got like right on stage, and maybe you got a backdoor pass or something like that. I mean, you were right there. I mean, everybody I talked to, the electricity in the room, just the sheer presence that was in the room was just unbelievable. And all the people that were there were saying the same thing. It was really a big experience, and something that I'm never going to forget. Now, hopefully, most of them will be back for this year to knock the second class, induct the second class, and we'll have that same electricity in the room again. And kudos to Spanky, because the induction ceremony that he put on. I mean, he had a professional videographer that had made videos to introduce each person, and videos of people giving some testimonials that played for each person that came up. And then we had somebody that went up to speak, and it was timed right for the dinner and everything. And I'm telling you, it was as good as any, like when you watch like the ESPYs, or you watch the Academy Awards or any other show and they coordinate it. It was coordinated that well and filmed that I'm shocked ESPN wouldn't be interested in taking that induction ceremony and playing it maybe as part of a 30 for 30, just or something like that, just playing the entire induction ceremony as it took place, because it was like a regular professional induction event.
Cool. That sounds
and
so
the people
awesome.
that were in the room and got to see it. It was just great. You guys were there, right?
No, I didn't attend last year. No, I'm excited. I'm excited about this year coming up, though. It should be a ton of fun. To be honest with you, and this is a conversation that
That's
I
my other
recently
nickname,
had
by
with.
the way. Ton of fun.
Oh, there you go. Hey, well, hey, ton of fun. The legend himself. A lot of the things that we've done, have been like, let's not be forward facing. Let's not be at conferences. Let's stay under the radar. And until you actually learn what something is, you might have a perception of what that is. And sometimes I just picture all these sports books together talking about like, what's next for them with some of their practices and things like that. And obviously BetBash is the complete opposite of that. But when I hear about a betting conference, that was my perception of it. Now that I've learned what it is, I'm really excited about it. It should be a lot of fun.
I mean, the way Spanky has it set up with now he's got all these seminars. He put his seminar schedule out the other day, and there's some really great seminars, and you have to pick. I mean, there's like 6 rounds and like 5 choices in each round. So you get to go to 6 seminars, but you have to pick from 5 for each time slot that there is. And there's some really, really good things from, every topic you can really think of. He really didn't leave any stones uncovered. And so he did a phenomenal job with that. And then one of the other events that's a real big event that's done the first day it's called speed networking.
Yeah.
Where everybody fills out a form of the type of people they're looking to network with or meet or talk to, and then they run it through an algorithm, and it's just like speed dating, but with meeting people, sports betting people. And all it takes to, first of all, you got an open bar every night at BetBash. There's food. There's
all right.
Food.
I'm there. I'm done. Sold.
There's food. There's a watch party with food. I think there's going to be, when there's the banquets and the seminars, or when there's the seminars and stuff like that, there's going to be a lunch spread, some type of lunch spread. So you're going to eat. You're going to be able to drink every night. And that, I mean, for the $1,000 and change you spend for the ticket, a lot of people can get their money's worth just out of the food and the beer, and food and the alcohol. But all it takes for you to get your money's worth is to make one good contact out of a plethora of sports enthusiasts and professional sports bettors, or learn just one thing that you didn't know that could tweak what you're doing to make what you're doing that much stronger. Gonna pay for that bet bash ticket 1,000, hundreds of times over in the long run. It's just crazy. And it's not something any sports bettor who has aspirations to be successful at should ever miss. You can only learn, and everybody's really eager to help and answer your questions too and stuff like that. Everybody's really approachable. So.
It sounds like an incredible event to attend. Absolutely, 100%. And since you're on that topic of sports bettors and success and that kind of thing, we've got a lot of sports bettors in our community. A lot of them at different points in their sports betting journey. Some of them just getting started. Some of them sort of in the middle, and they've developed a way to make money over time. And there's people like Pace on his level who have been doing it for several years, decades even, and with great success and are helping others and teaching others. So, since we've got somebody with your kind of experience here, I would be remiss not to ask you, what advice would you give to a sports bettor that's in the early stages of trying to be successful at this and trying to be successful long term?
Don't quit your day job yet.
Good one. Very good one.
That's the first thing. If you're going to end up doing it full time, keep doing your day job, kind of try and work it in. If you're getting to the point where you think you can maintain it and then seriously overcome, what you would make from your regular job. Because like I say the same thing to poker players. My first wife, she was a very good poker player, and she would go out and play, small cash games, and she'd win most of the time. And then she was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I was like, there's a difference between playing, because she never had to worry. Like if she went broke, she'd just take more money out of her pocket. So it was always a reload. Never had to worry about a reload or anything like that. I said, there's a big difference when you can play poker and just play poker, and you don't have to worry about whether you win or lose. It's a lot easier to win than if you have to play poker and you're trying to make the rent money. The win or loss is going to be whether or not you have the rent money or not. It adds a whole different level of pressure. So when you're betting sports, that's the same thing. If you're going to be playing sports to make the rent money, that's a lot harder to do than if you're playing sports to make some money, but you already have a day job that covers all those expenses. So you really have to be sure that it's something you can jump into and do before you quit that day job.
Love it. Great piece of advice there, Pace. I'm not quitting my day job. Not yet. No, I think that's fantastic advice for anyone out there. Absolutely.
Also, try not to lose.
Well, hey, we'll do our best. We'll do our best.
But a really interesting just piece of information, and again, this is going to be much more towards like a recreational player. But you touched on the 61% guy. The guy that's trying to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. You threw at the challenge. You hit it 61%. You got a guy like yourself.
61. Excuse me. Every time I refer to it, 61%, I get corrected. It's 61.4%.
Okay. So hopefully he's listening and is happy that you corrected him on his behalf. But 61.4%, right? That's like an astronomical hit rate for like a pregame handicapper. And this was specifically referenced to the NFL. For anyone that's, looking to get into this more seriously, you have to really understand that is an unheard of percentage. Number one, it's likely not going to transcend beyond the NFL. It's likely not going to be a year-long thing. And you have to manage, the 40%, the other side of it. And that 40%, it isn't like, oh, I hit 6 and I miss 4, and then I hit 6 and I miss 4, and it just repeats like that. Obviously you're going to have some significant losing runs.
Well, it's funny you
have to be able
put
to
it that way,
have
because
that perspective.
because when the whole bet was being discussed, his whole attitude was, well, all I have to do is go 3-2 every week. How hard is that? That was his whole attitude. And we laughed, we mocked, and then we ate crow.
But again, the perspective of it, forget about him doing it. It's the percentage of losses that you have on a regular basis as a winning player. And this is referencing like your typical minus 110 line. You know, we just had Adam on who's talking about being a 30% strike rate better, right? So what you wager on, how you wager on it, and managing, you know, that 40% or higher, in most cases is going to be higher. Those losses is everything, right? It's about survival, not about hitting for, you know, it's not about hitting once. It's about surviving over the long term.
Yeah, you have to win consistently, you know, as you go along. You can't just you know, rely on some, you know, the big hit here and there.
Yeah.
Those are nice when they come in, but when you catch something like that, but you can't rely on that or depend on that. You have to have a steady growth rate or something like that. Now, this is interesting. I get asked this a lot. People try to ask me, well, what's my winning percentage? And what's my ROI? Stuff like that. And I don't know if it's because I'm old school. And I have a degree in math, so it's not like I couldn't try to figure that out. I don't even think that stuff is, I think people get too, like, focused on that and not focused on winning. Like, for example, if I bet a game and, you know, let's say I'm trying to bet a particular sport that I'm handicapping or betting, I'm trying to bet, you know, an average of like 3 times a game or 2 times a game. And I can get a better number than the number I was trying to get. I don't have a problem going to 4 times or 5 times at the better number, because that's just added value. And my theory is, well, people say, well, yeah, but if you bet 4 on that, then that's extra units you bet. Or, I mean, I don't care about you. I'm not paying attention to that, because I look at it as, you take over the course of a season, all the times that I bet 5,000 when I was looking to bet 3,000, take all those $5,000 bets and put them in one pile, and I'll probably still have the same win rate or better than I would have at all the 4,000 bets or the 3,000 bets. But to sit there and every day and break it down, okay, well, this one was 5 units, and this was 3 units, and this, and let me see what my return on investment was. All I know is that at the end of the week, and I always have more money than I started with in the long run. So that's my return on investment, is I'm here and the bills are paid, and I'm still making money.
Right. And you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself, right?
What's that?
You're doing it for yourself. Like,
yes.
An ROI that you're going to go calculate, it sounds like it's for them, not for you. Like,
yeah,
said,
it's like I'll tell people that you're focusing on the wrong thing. That's not important. But the important thing is that you're winning, and you're collecting your money every week. That's another big. I mean, you got to make sure you can collect when you win too.
And you know what, though, Steve, I think that to some bettors, what you just said wouldn't be the best advice for them specifically. You're talking about your individual situation and what you focus on. Okay, are the bills paid? Do I have more money at the end of the week than I had before? Check, done. Whereas someone else that maybe has some bad habits, that the money isn't there at the end of the week, they do need to actually go look at things a little bit more specifically and get a little bit more micro with some of the things that they're doing.
I don't disagree with that, but what I'm saying is that if that becomes their primary focus, like their primary focus should always be what numbers they're betting at when they're betting. Even if like they could bet more because it's a better number, but they're only betting their 2 units that they're normally playing, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. I mean, I consider it a capital crime.
Not the end of the world, but hey, death sentence for it.
It's not the end of the world, but they get more. They're focused on, the win. If they're betting the same amount on every game, they're focused on, what their win-loss record is. If they're betting maybe different amounts and they're breaking it in units, and they're working on what their return on investment is. What they want to be focused on is if the stuff they're betting, if they're constantly betting with good CLV or good numbers, or they're getting the best of what they're betting for whatever amount that they're betting it at, that should be good enough that the long run will take care of them. As long as they're betting within their means, not over their head.
Yeah,
it's great advice.
Fats, you mentioned earlier, I think, that people can DM you, that your DMs are open. Where can people find you? How can they contact you? If I want some advice on a bet, how can I reach out to you?
All right. My Twitter handle is @real_fats, which is in the bottom corner there of the screen. And I don't block anybody. I'd rather argue with you than block you. If you don't believe me, you can ask GRP Wins. And Philly Godfather's another one. But I'd rather just argue the good fight, and because what I say, as far as I'm concerned, it makes sense, and I have legitimate, sound arguments. So I'm happy to express my opinion. Until they get to the point where best thing they can think of to try to prove me wrong is they say, "Well, yeah, but you're fat." So when you get the argument down to that point, I call that a win. But if you DM me, do not DM me to ask for picks. I do not give out picks. I'm not that there's occasions where I wouldn't say I'll tell you. I might tell you I bet on something, but in general, I'm not trying to tout picks. I'm trying to just give you helpful advice with strategies or how to bet certain things. And the main reason I don't like to give out picks is because a lot of times the number I bet the game at isn't available anymore. Yeah. So, and the number the game's at now, I wouldn't bet that game at. So for me to tell you I bet that game and have you go bet it at a number that I wouldn't bet it at now, I'm not doing you any favors. And even though it's the same game and it still has to win, I'm not doing you any favors, because the difference in the line, whether it's juice on money line or a half a point, it's going to be the difference in the long run. You may not win and I may still win. And so that's why I don't want to give out games. Although I got to tell you, there was one situation. I was talking to a friend of mine who I work with and discuss games with, Steve Golden, who's on Twitter. And we were talking about, there was a situation, it was with the Houston Texans, and there was really only one of their wide receivers was going to be healthy that week. And I forget which one of them it was, but it might have been Nico Collins. I think it was Nico Collins that week. And the other two were kind of like a little gimpy. And there was a prop that was for what wide receiver scores will have the most receiving yards for the Sunday game. And, usually all your like your Tyreek Hills and
your stars,
they're all, 5-1, or they're all short prices. And I saw Nico Collins was like 50-1 or something like that, or 50-something to 1. And the way Stroud was throwing the ball to this guy, I mean, he's in that ceiling range where he could get up there with the big boys. And so I did a podcast. I think I was trying to mock GRP a little bit with him and his prop expertise. So I said, so I started a space, and I was, gonna, give GRP the business a little bit in the space, part of the plan. And I said, I'm going to release a prop pick today, and we're going to let self-proclaimed prop expert GRP Wins. We're going to let him evaluate the pick and give us his opinion. And the pick I released was Nico Collins at like 50 something to 1.
No,
To
this
be
is
the highest.
legendary.
Doesn't he come in? He comes in. I mean, I had a couple hundred on it. I picked up like 13,000 on it.
Amazing.
It came in. Well, the next week, every week, who do you got this week? Who do you got this week? Who do you got this week? I opened up a can of worms. So anyway, that was the highlight of last year. And the funny part was, GRP wins always, like every now and then I'll express an opinion on something, and he was always quick to jump on me, like especially if it lost. Well, I've only seen Fats give out 3 picks or 4 picks, and all the time he's been on Twitter, and he's 1-4. So now I made up for it. I gave out a 55.
Yeah, you're good for another 50 picks.
I'm good for the next 40 picks now.
There you go. Awesome. Well, for everybody out there, if you guys want to engage with Fats, you want to fight with Fats on Twitter, there he's at Real Fats. Hit him up, argue with him, have some fun, and maybe you'll learn a thing or two along the way.
Don't encourage that. I mean, I do it, but,
Don't worry, our group isn't coming to you for picks.
Yeah,
That's not how we roll.
Don't worry about that, but they might come to you for some advice, and I'm sure you've got plenty of that to share with them. But I think we'll leave it at that for this week. So, Fats, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciated you sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and just sharing all the advice that you gave us and to our audience. So thanks so much, and would love to meet you in person at some point in the future. Hopefully, we get a chance, and maybe we'll get you back on the show at some point.
If you're at Bet Bash this year, we should see each other there.
Yeah.
If you guys make the trip. And speaking of Bet Bash, it's about a month away. I don't know if you have time to squeeze Spanky on, but it might not be a bad idea to get him on and get some more information.
I think we would love to have Spanky on the show. Absolutely.
Spanky is being scheduled as we speak. Him and I have been back and forth in the last couple of days, so it'd be really exciting to get him on.
I'll tell him to make sure he goes on.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'll give him a little push for. I'll give him a nudge.
Appreciate that, Fats. Any kind of push that we can get, we'll take it. But we'll leave it at that for the week. Fats, again, welcome back on the show anytime. Would love to have you back, and if we can meet in person, amazing.
Just where to find.
At Real Fats on Twitter. All right, there we go. Pace, Fats, and all the sports bettors around the world. Till next week, keep beating those bucks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Lines. Remember to like, download, and subscribe. We are on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Have a betting story or want to be featured on our podcast? Drop a note in the comments below. And if you want to join In Play Live, use promo code Behind the Lines.